Hello and welcome to the People's View. I think I've returned from the far medical operation, and I also came along with a couple of old friends. After being starting in this legislation here in New Hampshire way back in 2008, I met them. One is our Senator, Kevin
Avard.
Yeah. Kevin, tell somebody what committees you're on.
Well, I'm on Energy and Natural Resources. I'm the chairman of Energy and Natural Resources. Vice chair of Health and Human Services. I'm the chair of Rules as well. And there are a bunch of other subcommittees like Alzheimer's and guardian ad litems and groundwater protection, and there's a host of them. I'm doing the Dawn.
It's a little bit different than your time in the legislature and on the legislative side.
Yeah, when as a representative, you get to be on a committee, but right. You're limited to other committees, and in the Senate there's only 24 of us, so we spend a lot of time on other committees as well. So I think this is my 5th term as vice chair of HHS as well.
Very good.
So I guess I don't get the promotion to chairman.
And the other person is a representative. You're coming back.
I'm back. So Kevin Scully, state representative from Ward 6.
Right.
And I was a rep from 2018, 2019. Right. Gone, took an extended vacation for 6 years, and now I'm back again.
Well, that's good. You were pretty sharp there. I remember the first time you were up there, you sort of surprised people with the legislation you started and got through.
I surprised myself too, quite honestly. But it is interesting that, first you have to have a good idea,
right? And
then you have to be a little bit of a salesman in terms of being able to go pitch it. And one thing, I got some very good advice from 2 people. I took a legislative training session. I'd go up early before legislative days, and the Honorable Don Gorman, and then you know Don, okay, and Dan McGuire. They really kind of hammered into my head what it really took to be a successful legislator. And one of the things that they really also stressed is, getting a bill through the House is one thing, but there's also the Senate. And it's very important that you go up there and lobby your bills with the Senate too. So I did a lot of walking and talked to every senator I could possibly talk to, and
very smart thing to do.
And it was successful. And I'd like to think that the 3 bills that I got passed really helped make New Hampshire a better place.
Well, I think you two are still working hard up there. I think there's a lot of things that we have to do, and we're going to start talking about that and different parts of the legislation and how it's going and what's happened and what they can expect.
It's going to be an interesting year this year. We border security. That's one thing, supporting our police officers. I think border security is going to. That's going to fly pretty fast. They just passed, the governor just signed HB 4, Senate Bill 4 or something. Maybe it was HB 4.
I think it came down from the Senate. You talked about the one about the
housing.
Financing for housing.
Yeah, that was, she just signed that into law just the other day. Actually, I had to fast track that because of the housing crisis that we're running into. And bringing in the workforce, but definitely the border security is a big issue. Sanctuary cities is a big issue, and we're definitely going to try to fast track that as well. And we're trying to cut back on the budget a little bit because of revenues aren't as
high as they were last.
Yeah, but I think when the economy turns around, we'll see. Some benefits coming up the road, but right now we have to tighten up the belt and look where we can make some cuts and push the budget forward. But it's a budget year, so.
Well, you are getting less money from the federal help.
Yeah,
that's where, and you think that's what's happening on the federal level is going to affect you more.
I think so. Just for instance, I mean, we have ARPA money that's being all used up. That's from the feds, and Governor Sununu to put in like one particular. It was a one-time ARPA money, and it had to do with the suicide hotlines.
Oh.
Well, that money's now no longer there, but the suicide hotline is in jeopardy. So they asked me to put in a bill to support that. And it's an interesting process because thousands and thousands of phone calls have come in over the last year for emergency suicide
Really?
hotlines. It blew my mind, yeah. Thousands. I thought it'd be hundreds, but it's literally thousands. And, walking people off the cliff, so to speak. A lot of mental illness issues going on. But if you call 911, that's not going to work. And so they developed, I think it's the 988. So in order to support that, you need to add a fee or an assessment on the phone bill, which is like 25 or 35 cents. That's not going to fly over too well because it's a tax. So we're going to see if we can change it to where it just comes out of the general fund and fund it because it is saving lives.
Yeah.
And so that's just one instance where the federal money is run out, and so you've got to compensate or get rid of the program.
That includes some medical problems that. Not just the suicide.
I believe, it's called the suicide hotline, though, right? And so, and of course, then there's 911. I think there's another one as well.
And then you had one that assistant suicide, as they call it.
Well, we're not going to pass that.
No, I don't think so. But I'm just saying that was brought up. That's how important it is. We've been doing medical problems since I was there back in 2008. And we've never really solved it completely.
Working on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're working on, and there's a host of bills like that that they're really important. I did put in a couple of controversial ones on biological sex. Bathroom bill. Yeah, that was quite an interesting night. That lasted a long time. And I did one on the materials in school. This is an important bill, and I hope you vote for it when it comes over, because I think I had the votes. But it's they call it censorship and book banning, and I think that is such a disservice to our constituents. It's prevarication or lies, however you want to call it. It's not a book banning. The bill basically, in essence, if a parent has an issue with a book, maybe it's white supremacy or a Jew-hating book, if
Right.
or something to disparage black people, or if it's over sexual. Well, if a parent goes to the principal right now, I mean, they don't really have a whole lot of recourse. But if you pass this bill, this allows the parents to say, "Hey, look, this is objectionable material," and the principal will have a certain period of time to look at the material in a public setting, so that the public can see what the principal is.
So he has a hearing for people.
And it's out there in the public.
Right.
Now, if the principal says, "Hey, look, I don't see a problem with this book being in our library," sorry, then that person can go to the school board. Again, it's now made public.
Process you have
right.
there.
So this can show the public what the school board is approving. That's all it's doing. And it's giving the parent that ability to speak up and be heard, and without being persecuted or being called
Daylight to the problem. And,
right. It's not a book banning.
Yeah.
It's allowing the parents to have a say in the process without being ridiculed or shouted out, shouted down. So that's coming up in next week, I think, actually.
Oh boy.
So, but it draws a crowd.
We'll see.
Yeah.
See, you're going to have to let us all know what happens.
Well, I do think it's very important we remember that over 2,500 years of trial and error, we have come up with the best ways to do things, and that includes parenting. I think the society has decided that in most cases it's best for the parents to decide what is best for their children.
Right.
And we don't let minors enter into contracts. We don't let them drink alcohol. I mean, there's a whole list of things we don't let them do because they're children and they just don't have the intellectual moral maturity to make good decisions. So I think it's very appropriate for the adults in the room, and hopefully our adults, to decide what children should be exposed to. And I think the most important, decider of that are the parents themselves.
Right.
So,
and allowing them to speak up on the whole issue is the important part. But what happens is some of these bills get hijacked by narratives, false narratives. Well, this is a book banning. No, it isn't. You're lying. And it's time to take off the gloves because we're tired of being shouted down by the people that show up and they're not telling the truth.
yeah, the loudest voice does not necessarily have the best argument. And yet what they try to do is to shout people down and bully them into, we've had our very successful egalitarian society. It's been under continued attack now by radicals for the last 20 years. And I think for the most part, we are reasonable people and we do try to make accommodations. But at some point, you have to say, that's it.
Were you there when Representative Cordelli was trying to read a book on in session?
Yes. Well, I mean, I watched it on TV. I saw the YouTube video of it, yeah.
Yeah, so Representative Cordelli, basically, he's on education in the House. He tried to read one of the books that's in the school library. So he starts reading it. All the Democrats stand up and start walking out. Well, that's not appropriate. Well, if we can't read it in public,
Right.
To adults.
to adults, and why is that in the school library? There's a hypocrisy there. Actually, this bill was actually heard, so we're going to be voting on it next week. But I do have another one with school sports, and that draws a crowd as well. A lot of intimidation. Why do you hate us?
Definitely, sure.
Basically, it has to do with females not competing against males, biological males in school sports. If you want to have co-ed, wonderful. Have co-ed. It's part of the bill. But if there's a female sport like lacrosse and a biological male gets on that team and crowds out somebody for a scholarship or hurts her, or she's sitting on the bench because he's much better than her, well, she's going to have legal recourse at this point if this bill passes. It also has to do with the bathrooms as well, where biological males will not be allowed in biological females' bathrooms. We had a lot of discussion about that because there was 3 other bills about that last week. We had a lot of testimony and my heart goes out to the individuals that feel as being a biological male that they have to feel like they have to dress like a woman. That's your choice, but don't put it down to the kids.
Yeah.
Right? If that's what you want, that's fine. But we had some people. One lady came in and she testified. She walked into the Capitol and she got onto the elevator and there were 3 men. They were 6 feet tall. She was uncomfortable being in that elevator with those 3 men. So one of the senators in the hearing said, well, what if those 3 men were in the bathroom? Would you feel uncomfortable? She said, absolutely, I would not feel comfortable. Well, the next question is, well, if they were in a dress with makeup and glitter on their face, would you feel more comfortable if they were in the female bathroom? And the answer is obviously no. So why are you allowing the 4th grade girls going into the bathroom and men being in the same bathroom with them? Something doesn't jive here.
Yeah.
It's not meant to be that way.
Right.
We want to correct that situation because it adds to confusion. And I did ask one, I'm trying not to hog, but.
Oh, no, you're on a roll, buddy, go.
I did ask one important question to one of the other senators that was trying to grill me on this. I asked her, I said, so we know that gender dysphoria is a mental illness. It's on the books. Look it up. It is on the books. Right. We also know that there are people with evil intent. How can you tell the difference between somebody whom you think is legitimately trans or somebody who is suffering from a mental illness or somebody who has evil intent? Senator, you don't know. And so we need to walk that back and get back to the basics. What we grew up with the bathrooms being segregated for a reason, for safety, because you can't tell. We recently saw what happened in Massachusetts with the governor of Massachusetts letting a pedophile out of prison because he was an illegal alien, and she didn't want ICE to get this person. So he's also a trans. He dressed up like a woman, goes to New York, rapes a 14-year-old boy, and I believe the 14-year-old boy died. So, is it all trans that do that? No, but we've got to fix this problem. Right? And so we've got legislation on that behalf. My heart goes out to the individuals that are struggling with this. I get it. But don't force that on individuals that have a different culture.
Representative Scully, tell us a little bit about what you do in what committees you're on, and if you have any problems similar to what
Well, first I want to say I feel like a real slacker.
No.
What you're doing, I'm only on one committee, and I am not either the chair or the vice chair of that. I'm on environment and agriculture, and I thought that was a good fit for me given my 40 years of doing site investigations and cleanups at hazardous waste sites. So far, most of the work we've been doing is either working with trying to expand the ability of people with homestead food licenses, these small little businesses to branch out and do more. So there's been a lot of those bills. And the other bills that I think are the big issue bills are for landfills. And, everybody generates trash. It's got to go somewhere. So then the question is, where is it going and how is it disposed of? And I'm learning as I go in terms of what these issues are. At this point, we seem to have adequate capacity here in New Hampshire. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But a lot of people are, what I didn't know was that about 50% of the waste that is being put in New Hampshire landfills are actually coming from out of state. So that's a real bone of contention with a lot of people. The bills that I've seen and a couple we've passed so far, I thought helped improve the site licensing process in terms of what we're going through. They'll be coming up for you to look at and to see if you agree with us. There's also some bills in there that I'm a little uncomfortable with or uneasy with right now, including the bill as it was originally proposed was to put a 5-year moratorium on any type of permitting. I do believe they had a provision for existing landfills, but nonetheless, I don't want to get into a situation where we're saying, well, it's not perfect, we're going to shut everything down. And I want to leave options open for the people of New Hampshire, the smart people we've hired to look at these issues. And so that's something that actually is going to be voted on this week. And I must tell you, I think at this point, if they're pushing for a 5-year moratorium, I wouldn't vote for that. I don't think we should tie the hands of the next legislature. Let them make that decision themselves. And if we think it's a good idea, that's great. Let the next, they can pass another bill, to hold it for another 2 years if they need to. So, but these are the things that, we're wrestling with. And then, of course, you have all the other committees, and then on session day, you're bringing hearing it all. It's interesting. I always thought it was interesting how many bills there seems to be general agreement on by both parties. Of course, I assume you have a consent calendar for. Yeah, same thing. So there's a whole bunch of bills that just get passed on a single voice vote because everybody thinks it's a good idea. Right. So we spend all of our time on the bills that people have disagreements about, deciding whether those are going to get passed or not.
So is there anything in particular that you have just that issue on the waste handling?
Well, we had a couple of bills that generated a whole lot of heat, and one of them was a cat declawing bill, which has been brought on more than one occasion.
Was that Craig Hill's bill?
I don't remember the sponsor. I'm sorry. It had a lot of sponsors, co-sponsors on there. That generated a whole bunch of heat in terms. It was not passed by the committee, and I voted against it because I really felt the bill was very poorly written, and it wasn't. I thought the bill was written in a way that if you adopted a cat that had been declawed and you took it into the vet, somebody could basically drop a dime on you and you would suddenly be responsible of the condition of the cat, even though you didn't do it.
It keeps coming year after year.
Yeah. So I think I've been told that's like the fourth time it came up. The other bill that's really generating a lot of interest right now, it has to do with the use of glue traps for pest control. And that's before us again. And I literally have gotten hundreds of emails from people about this. And God bless them. I don't want to see any one of God's creatures suffer unnecessarily. I also think that it's very important. These things serve a very important purpose in terms of protecting our food supply, and from contamination. And it is interesting. I think for most of human history, there's always been this battle for the food supply. And right now, we seem to be winning, which is great. But I don't want to take away options from people who. We had some folks in the pest control industry came up and talked about that, and they said, if we can't use these, we're going to have to use a lot more pesticides, and so you'll be poisoning the environment because you don't want to do that. So there's always two sides of it, and at this point, I would say I'm going to vote against banning those, because if they're used properly, they actually.
Have you been involved in anything with the local problem of this, where they're putting a new area right on the river? Where they're from the old
the Riverwalk,
the leather plant.
Yeah,
is that what that was?
Well,
they're
it was the tannery.
Yeah, the tannery,
right?
Where they're going to bury this waste that they've added.
It's a super fun
and put this, lawn over it and have 500 apartments around it.
Well, it kind of depends on what the type of contamination is. Because again, going back to what I used to do, there was some like lead acetate. Lead is a toxin for people, but if it actually can combine with other elements and become something that's very insoluble, it doesn't give any kind of odor. So there are times when it's a perfectly legitimate solution to the problem, which is to basically, if you know it's not going to go leach into the water, and if you know it's not going to create vapors for the air, then you can put down some kind of impermeable barrier, have vertical separation of maybe 6 or 8 clean feet of fill.
Yeah.
And what you do is you put in what are called like deed restrictions. Right. So you can't go in and just dig the stuff up. I mean, it's built right into the deed. You have to take these special precautions if you're going to do this type of work in the future, which, go down and lay more lines for utilities or something like that. And if you do that, and it's done correctly, it's perfectly safe.
Okay, yeah, I know there's lots of ways of doing it.
Yeah.
I have a background in that area also, but do they have a way of measuring whether it's actually leaking out?
Well, if you had something that actually could create some kind of leachate, normally you would have monitor wells, sentinel wells that would be, ringing the area, at least in the direction of groundwater flow, and you'd look for that. You can put up vapor monitoring equipment so you can get readings in real time to see if there's any kind of
breakout. Does that get built into the legislation?
That usually there are regulations regarding certain things a lot of times I think the legislation, as you know, is very broad brush stuff, and then we would leave it up to the professionals who are working in the departments.
And make it current for things that develop and use it. But the reason I asked that is I did go to one meeting that they were having on this, and the person said, "Oh, we have somebody taking care of that," just sort of washing it away.
Oh, that makes you feel better.
Don't worry about that.
And then I think of that thing in Buffalo that happened up to, 50 years ago, where they built it and covered it up, and then they built a school right on top of it. And
was that Love Canal?
Yeah. What?
Was it Love Canal?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That was a beautiful one, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, again, that was probably an improper use of burying it, because if it does.
Well, I just didn't want to see that happen. And I've never had an answer back that made any sense yet, and I was just wondering whether.
Well, arsenic, I think it's probably, if it's tannery, there was a lot of arsenic contamination there. Doesn't create vapors. It can be soluble under certain conditions, so you just have to understand what the conditions are. sometimes if the pH of the water gets changed, suddenly something that wasn't
right.
soluble becomes soluble. So you have to look at the entire picture and say, does this make sense to do that?
So on that topic, though, we talked about landfills, right?
Right.
And so some of the legislation that came in, that's being proposed, is we need to have a hydrologist come in, and they have to do a 5-year study on the water flow. Now, where the tannery is. There's a river runs through it. Sounds like a movie,
Yeah.
right? And of course, if you walk down Mine Falls, you can smell the vapors with the cones that you walk by them, you smell
Yeah,
it.
chromium's another one.
Right, but I don't know if they've done any type of hydrology testing or anything like that, or have any of their sensors put in. I know it's an interesting topic in the Senate because here they want money for to clean that up, but they had $30 million for an art center. How'd that work? That's the talk.
How'd they get the money for that?
You want money for this, but you had $30 million.
That's all another question, too.
Yeah, I know.
We've had people talk about that, and maybe we'll get to that in the future.
Yeah.
But we don't really have any much time left. I enjoy talking with this, and this is just starting again. We'll have you people in a number of times to talk about some of these subjects.
He did call us old,
He calls me kid.
He said old friends. It's like, oh, dude, really?
Yeah.
Good. Thanks for having us, though, Carl. We appreciate it.
I really appreciate you coming aboard and starting this again and getting the people who are wondering what's happening to them a little bit of explanation of what's happening.
Well, you're doing a good public service in allowing this to go forward. And we hope other guests.
Each of you, I hope, are going to have your own little things as we go on.
Sure.
So thank you
There's
again.
some interesting people up in Concord. We'll
Definitely. I missed that. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And thank you for listening.